We've decided to restructure the client relations department. Ruth, today will be your last day." The words hung in the air of the sleek boardroom like an unwelcome odor. I stared at Gregory Stanton, the new executive director who had joined Franklin and Associates just 8 months ago. His expression was practiced a careful blend of corporate regret and detached professional M. After 25 years, my voice remained steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Business decisions aren't personal," he replied, sliding a manila folder across the polished table. "Human Resources has prepared a transition package. 2 Monon compensation and continuation of benefits through the end of the quarter." Teresa Mills from Human Resources sat beside him, nodding sympathetically while avoiding eye contact. "The necessary downside affects several teams," she added. "This isn't a reflection on your performance, wasn't it? Though." At 58, I was the oldest employee in client relations. My compensation was commensurate with my experience that had helped build Caldwell & Partners from a scrappy legal consulting firm. "Into an industry leader, does Arthur know about this?" I asked, referring to Henry Caldwell, the founding partner who had personally hired me. 25 years ago, Dominic's jaw tightened. All partners were consulted on restructuring decisions, an obvious non-answer. Arthur had been in London for the past 3 weeks negotiating our expansion into the European market. "Best of luck in your future endeavors," Dominic concluded with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Security will escort you to clear out your desk standard protocol." I'd helped write that protocol 12 years ago. My name is Linda Atwood, and until 10 minutes ago, I was the Senior Director of Client Relations at Franklin & Associates. One of Boston's premier legal consulting firms, I devoted my career to building relationships with our clients, understanding their needs, anticipating their concerns, and ensuring they felt valued beyond the billable hours in an industry where firms were often seen as interchangeable. I'd made sure our clients saw us as irreplaceable. Now I was being discarded like an outdated policy manual with nothing but a manila folder and platitudes to show for a quarter-century of dedication. As the security guard hovered awkwardly by my desk, I methodically packed my personal items photos with clients at charity galas. Thank you notes from the Chambers family after we helped them navigate a complex corporate restructuring, the crystal paperweight Arthur had given me on my 20th work anniversary. My phone buzzed a text from Catherine Winters, CEO of Winters Healthcare. Our largest client, Ruth, heard troubling rumors about changes at FNA. "Our quarterly review is next week. Call me ASAP." I looked up to see Dominic watching from his business center, already on the phone. No doubt spinning damage control. What he didn't know, what none of them seemed to understand, was that client relationships couldn't be transferred in a memo or reassigned in a database. They were built on trust, consistency, and personal connection. And I had just been severed from 25 years' worth of those connections. I joined Caldwell & Partners in 1998 when we occupied half a floor in a modest business center building and had exactly 17 clients. Henry Caldwell was 42. Then, bursting with ambition and determined to create a different kind of consulting firm, one where client satisfaction genuinely mattered. More than billable hours, numbers are the language of business. "Ruth," he told me during my interview, "but relationships are its hard. Anyone can crunch numbers. Not everyone can build trust." Over the years, I'd embodied that philosophy. While others chased promotions through high-profile projects and business center politics, I focused on becoming indispensable to our clients. I remembered their children's names and college choices. I knew which clients wanted detailed technical explanations and which preferred big-picture summaries. I tracked company milestones, leadership changes, and strategic pivots, so we could anticipate their needs rather than merely respond to them. "You're the relationship architect," Arthur had said at my 20th anniversary celebration. "You've built the foundation that supports everything we do." The firm had grown steadily under Arthur's leadership, but things began to change 2 years ago when we took on outside investors to fuel expansion. New partners joined the leadership team, bringing Harvard MBAs and strategic visions that increasingly prioritized efficiency metrics over client experience. Gregory Stanton, with his slick presentations and ruthless focus on the bottom line, had been the most aggressive of these additions since his arrival. Employee turnover had increased by 40%. The unofficial motto had shifted from Arthur's clients first to Dominic's maximum value extraction. I'd voiced concerns during executive meetings pointing out that our client retention rates were beginning to slip. We're sacrificing long-term stability for short-term gains. I argued the market is changing. Ruth Dominic had responded dismissively, "We need to adapt or die. Some of our legacy processes are frankly outdated." I'd noticed my gradual exclusion from strategic discussions over the past 6 months. Meeting invitations stopped arriving. Email threads omitted my address. Younger team members were assigned to key client accounts as secondary contacts without my consultation. Still, I'd assumed my institutional knowledge and client relationships would protect me. After all, I managed relationships with clients who represented over 60% of our annual revenue. Catherine Winters alone brought in nearly $4 million yearly and had explicitly stated in her last contract renewal that she wanted me as her primary contact recently, though I'd sensed something more ominous brewing. Last week I'd overheard Dominic on the phone. "The restructuring gives us an opportunity to trim the legacy fat. Their retirement plans would cost us millions in the long run." 18E should have seen it coming. But after 25 years, I'd made the mistake of thinking loyalty still counted for something. The humiliation of being escorted from the building like a security threat still burned. 3 days later, I sat in my apartment surrounded by job search websites and unanswered texts from colleagues. My LinkedIn profile had exploded with views nothing like a sudden termination to make you temporarily interesting. My landline rang a rare occurrence these days. I almost let it go to voicemail until I recognized the number. "Hello, Ruth, it's Arthur." His familiar British accent was tighter than usual. I just landed from London and heard the news. This wasn't authorized by me. A complicated wave of emotions crashed over me. Relief that Arthur hadn't approved, proved my termination anger that it had happened anyway, and a lingering sense of betrayal that he hadn't protected me, despite our history. "Well, it happened regardless," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Dominic said all partners were consulted. I was deliberately sidelined. Arthur said his frustration evident. They waited until I was overseas dealing with the EU regulatory issues. The executive committee pushed it through on an emergency approval basis, citing imminent necessity to improve quarterly projections before our investor meeting. 25 years, Arthur, I deserved better than a 10-minute meeting and a security escort. You deserved much better. He agreed. "I want to make this right. What if I bring you back? We can call it a misunderstanding, a communication error. It's not that simple." I interrupted. Dominic made it crystal clear that I'm considered dispensable. Legacy fat was the term I heard him use. The silence on the other end told me Arthur understood the significance of what I was saying in the corporate world. Being undermined by leadership was a death sentence to effectiveness. There was no coming back from that. Not really. I'm sorry. Ruth, truly, this company was built on the relationships you nurtured, and how are those relationships being maintained now that I'm gone? I asked. Another pause. Dominic assigned your accounts to the junior partners. Melissa Bennett is handling Winters' health care. I couldn't suppress a dry laugh. Catherine Winters had openly clashed with Melissa during a strategy session last year, finding her approach too aggressive and impersonal. Good luck with that. After hanging up, I stared at my phone as it began to light up with notifications. Clients were reaching out. Not just Catherine, but Douglas from Archer Pharmaceutic, Belinda from Summit Financial. The entire executive team at Westridge Manufacturing word was spreading about my departure. I hadn't reached out to any of them. I was too professional to badmouth my former employer, regardless of how they treated me, but clients talk to each other. They belong to the same industry groups, sit on the same boards, attend the same conferences. My doorbell rang. A courier handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a formal letter from Catherine Goldstein, the most sought-after headhunter in Boston's consulting world, along with a handwritten note. Heard what happened at FNA. Several firms would value your client portfolio dinner tomorrow. I set the letter down, thinking about Dominic's smug face as he terminated me. I wasn't going to sabotage Caldwell and Partners. I didn't need to. They had already done that themselves. The next morning, my phone rang at 7:38 a.m. "Catherine Winters, never want to waste time with pleasantries. Tell me you're not actually gone," she demanded without preamble. "I'm afraid I am," I replied, pouring my coffee. "Restructuring, they called it." Catherine snapped, "I've worked exclusively with you for 12 years. Melissa Bennett emailed me yesterday, introducing herself as my new relationship manager. That girl tried to explain my own business model to me last year. I chose my words carefully. Caldwell and Partners is making strategic changes. I'm sure they believe they're acting in the best interest of their clients. Don't give me the corporate line." "Ruth, we've known each other too long." Catherine paused. "Where are you going next?" "I haven't decided yet." "Well, decide quickly. Our contract with FNA is up for renewal in 60 days. I'd prefer to follow you." This was the moment. I should have said something reassuring about Franklin and Associates, about the quality of their work remaining consistent, despite personnel changes. That's what professionalism dictated. Instead, I said, "I appreciate your confidence. Catherine, let me explore my options and get back to you by noon." I'd received similar calls from 5 other major clients by dinner time. That number had risen to 11. I hadn't solicited any of them. I hadn't needed to. Catherine Goldstein met me at an upscale restaurant in Back Bay, her sharp eyes assessing me over reading glasses. "You're the talk of the industry right now," she said after ordering. "Gregory Stanton made a catastrophic mistake." "Perhaps," I said, non-committed. She laughed, always diplomatic. "That's part of your appeal." She slid a folder across the table. 3 firms want to meet with you. 2 are creating a special position specifically to bring you and your client relationships on board. I glanced at the compensation figures and nearly choked on my water. They were offering almost double my previous compensation. "They're not just paying for your expertise," Catherine explained, reading my expression. "They're paying for your little black book." The irony wasn't lost on me. After being discarded as too expensive by Caldwell and Partners, I was now worth twice as much to their competitors. I wondered if Dominic had considered this possibility in his cost-cutting calculations. The next morning, Arthur called again. "I need to see you," he said, sounding uncharacteristically agitated. "Can you come to the business center?" "I don't think that's appropriate given the circumstances." "Then lunch, the Harvest, 1 p.m. Please, Ruth, things are happening that you should know about. Curiosity got the better of me at precisely 1 p.m. I walked into the Harvest to find Arthur already seated. Looking haggard. "Thank you for coming," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I've been trying to fix this situation, but Dominic is blocking me at every turn. He's convinced the board that your termination was necessary for modernizing our approach and the clients I asked, how are they responding to this modernization?" Arthur winced. "Not well. Catherine Winters has demanded a meeting with the entire executive team. Douglas from Archer is reviewing their options. 3 smaller clients have already given notice." I sipped my water, saying nothing. "Here's what I'm proposing." Arthur continued, leaning forward. "I create a new position. Chief Client Officer reporting directly to me, bypassing Dominic entirely, better compensation, more autonomy." It sounded perfect, exactly what I would have wanted a week ago to perfect. I studied Arthur's expression and saw something beyond concern. Fear. "What aren't you telling me?" "Arthur," he hesitated. Then Dominic has a plan to push me into early retirement. He's been consolidating power-building alliances with the newer partners. If the client situation deteriorates further, he'll use it as leverage to force for me out. So that was it. Arthur wasn't trying to save me. He was trying to save himself. I was simply the means to that end. I'm sorry, Arthur. but I already have meetings scheduled with other firms. You understand business decisions aren't personal." The look on his face as I threw Dominic's words back at him almost made the whole ordeal worthwhile. Almost. Over the next week, I met with all 3 firms. Catherine had amended each meeting, followed a similar pattern, effusive praise for my client relationship skills, thinly veiled questions about which clients might follow me, and increasingly generous compensation offers. I was leaning toward Blackwell Consulting, a mid-sized firm with values reminiscent of the original Franklin & Associates. Their offer included equity partnership, something I'd never been offered at FNA despite my contributions to the firm's growth. Meanwhile, the situ at Caldwell & Partners was deteriorating faster than even I had anticipated. Industry blogs were reporting client unrest and leadership tensions. My former assistant, Thomas, texted me updates Catherine Winters had indeed met with the executive team and left visibly angry. Douglas from Archer Pharmaceuticals had canceled their quarterly review. Even Westridge Manufacturing, a client known for their institutional loyalty, was rumored to be seeking proposals from competitors. Then came the call that changed everything. Ruth Pearson, I answered while reviewing Blackwell's offer letter. "Miss Pearson, this is Jeffrey Hammond from the Boston Business Journal." I sat up straighter. The BBJ was the Bible of Boston's corporate world. "I'm working on a story about the recent leadership changes at Caldwell & Partners and their impact on client relationships. Several sources have mentioned your name. Would you be willing to comment?" This was dangerous territory. Anything I said could be construed as disparaging my former employer, potentially exposing me to legal action under the non-disparagement clause in my severance agreement. "I'm not comfortable commenting on internal matters at Franklin & Associates," I replied carefully. "Understandable." Hammond said, "What about the fact that 7 major clients have already announced they're terminating their relationships with FNA Industry? Insiders are suggesting this exodus is directly related to your departure. 7 clients. I'd only spoken directly with 15, and none had definitively stated they were leaving FNA. I can't speak to clients' business decisions," I said. "Many factors go into selecting consulting partners." Of course, I could hear Hammond typing one more question. Any comment on the letter signed by 26 of FN's Cent S, demanding Henry Caldwell replace Gregory Stanton as executive director. I nearly dropped the phone. I have no knowledge of such a letter. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. 26 clients, an organized demand to replace Dominic. I hadn't orchestrated any of this. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Emergency all-hands meeting called for tomorrow morning. Partners flying in from everywhere. Dominic looks like he's about to have a stroke. An hour later, Arthur called. "Did you organize this client revolt?" he demanded without preamble. "I've done nothing, Arthur. I haven't solicited a single client." Then, "How do you explain this?" He sounded desperate. 70% of our client base is threatening to leave the board, is in panic mode. Investors are demanding answers. I don't have. Perhaps they value relationship continuity more than cost-cutting efficiency. I suggested, "This isn't a joke. Ruth, 25 years of building this firm, and it could collapse in 25 days. There was a bitter satisfaction in hearing the panic in Arthur's voice, the same Arthur who had failed to protect me after 25 years of loyalty. "What do you want from me?" "Arthur, come back," he pleaded. "Not as chief client officer, as full equity partner. Help me stabilize the situation. Partner, the position I deserved for at least a decade, but had been repeatedly denied." And Dominic Arthur's voice hardened. "The board is meeting. Tonight his future will be decided before tomorrow's all-hands meeting." I thought about the Blackwell offer in front of me, partnership. There would be comfortable, lucrative, and far less complicated than returning to FNA, but I'd built those client relationships over 25 years. They were, in many ways, my life's work. I need to think about it. I said finally, "I'll give you my answer in the morning." Sleep eluded me that night. I paced my apartment, weighing my options while the digital clock ticked toward morning. Returning to Franklin & Associates would mean facing the colleagues who had watched my humiliating exit in silence. It would mean navigating the political aftermath of Dominic's apparent downfall. a downfall I hadn't engineered, but would certainly be blamed for the firm's culture had been deteriorating. For years, one leadership change wouldn't fix that overnight. On the other hand, Blackwell offered a fresh start. New colleagues, new culture, new opportunities. The compensation and partnership were generous. I could bring willing clients with me and build something vibrant by 6 a.m. Linda Atwood stands by her window, rain scent drifting in. Dawn bleeds across Chicago's skyline, her mobile still warm. Catherine's laugh echoes in her ear, half comfort, half dare. She whispers to her own reflection, "What if they refuse my terms?" The clock glides toward 8:45. Each tick feels like a gavel. Did she just gamble away her last crumb of pride? Inside Caldwell and Partners' glass boardroom, the lights blink awake. Teresa Mills arranges folders, hands trembling. Gregory Stanton paces, collar tight. The partners file in, murmurs rising like steam. Henry Caldwell is absent. Silent sentinel, unseen kingmaker. Their verdict will fall before the all-hands bell. At 8:44, Linda pockets the phone, shoulders a trench coat, steps into the elevator. One breath, one press of G. If Blackwell balks, the elevator will carry her past familiar desks, past memories. If Blackwell nods, she walks into new corridors, new respect. Ding, the doors slide open. Time to learn which life greets her on the other side. I stepped off the elevator on the 30th floor. Rain scent clung to my coat. The lobby lights buzzed. The receptionist blinked. "Miss Atwood." "I'm here for the all-hands," I said. The boardroom doors loomed, lacquered oak, chrome handles cold beneath my palm. Inside, whispers died, rows of faces, some hopeful, some wary. Gregory nowhere. Arthur stood at the front. He met my gaze, a flicker of relief. Then he spoke. "Thank you for coming," his voice carried. "Ruth has agreed to return. Full equity partner." A rustle, a gasp. Thomas, back row, thumbs up. I walked forward. Shoes clicked against marble. Each echo counted. "Thank you, Arthur," I said. Heads turned. I paused. "I'm not rejoining Franklin." Silence. Arthur froze. "I've accepted a partnership at Blackwell. Effective today. The acquisition closes this week. We will integrate this firm into Blackwell Franklin Consulting." Murmurs swelled. A single line of shock rippled around the table. Arthur paled. "Linda, what have you done?" "I preserved value you forgot you had." Gregory's absence felt heavier than any shout. A young associate clutched her folder like a life raft. Teresa dabbed at her cheek, apology, pride, all mixed. I caught Henry's eye behind the glass wall. He gave a small nod. Recognition at last. The crowd's voices rose. Some called my name. Some reached to shake my hand. The sting of last month's exit dissolved in one collective exhale. Arthur stepped closer. "You orchestrated this." "No. I honored the relationships you dismissed." I laid a folder on the table. Inside, retention charts, client pledges, quarterly projections. All signed, all real. Arthur opened it. Pages fluttered. His fingers trembled. 3-year advisory contract, I said. No management. Your choice. He stared. The clock chimed 9. The sound felt final. Later, headlines blared across the Boston Business Journal. Historic acquisition after client exodus. My name appeared once, quietly. In paragraph 15, just the facts. 3 weeks later, Blackwell banners hung over Franklin's foyer. Client calls returned faster than refunds. Retention, 95%. Revenue up 22. My new business center smelled of cedar and fresh coffee. Catherine knocked. "Lunch?" "Always," I smiled. We walked through corridors once laced with whispers. Now the air carried confidence. Elevator descent. Floors ticked by like memories. Ground level. Glass doors slid open. Rain had stopped. The sidewalk shimmered. Catherine spoke. You proved relationships are the asset. Buildings are just steel. I nodded. Inside my coat pocket the phone buzzed. A single message from Arthur. Thank you for the grace. I exhaled. The city sounded brighter.